champagne struck Elena Moretti across the chest before the orchestra finished its final note. The ballroom fell silent as pale gold liquid soaked into her white server's jacket. Vanessa Cole stood inches away, holding the empty crystal glass with a smile designed for cameras. "I warned management about her," Vanessa announced. "She's been hovering around my table all evening." Elena remained still, balancing the dessert tray against one hip. At 34, she had learned that wealthy gets often mistook silence for weakness. Vanessa seemed especially confident that the plus-size waitress would lower her eyes and accept the humiliation. Instead, Elena looked toward the digital clock above the service entrance. 9:41 p.m. Governor Hale was scheduled to sign the North Harbor redevelopment agreement at 10. 19 minutes remained. "My bracelet is missing," Vanessa continued, raising her voice. "The diamond one Cameron gave me." Cameron Reed, CEO of Reed Meridian Holdings, stepped away from a group of donors. His expression revealed embarrassment rather than concern. He wanted the scene contained before the governor arrived. "Vanessa," he said quietly, "we can handle this privately." "No," she pointed at Elena. "Search her now." Two hotel security officers approached. Elena did not resist, but her fingers tightened around the tray. Beneath the central dessert station lay a sealed financial report she had removed from the banquet office 23 minutes earlier. It contained 4 vendor payments routed through a children's charity that had never received them. More troubling was the authorization code attached to the final transfer, the same code scheduled to release $90 million when the governor signed the harbor agreement. Elena had tried calling Luca twice. Both calls had been redirected to a dead extension inside the hotel. "Empty your pockets," the security chief ordered. Elena placed her order pad, room key, and folded serving cloth on the nearest table. The second guard opened the small pouch attached to her apron. A diamond bracelet fell onto the white tablecloth. Gasps moved across the room. Elena stared at it. For the first time, her composure cracked. "That was not in my pouch." Vanessa gave a soft, triumphant laugh. "Of course it wasn't." Phones rose around the ballroom. Guests began recording as the security chief picked up the bracelet with a napkin. Cameron's face hardened. "Call the police." "You cannot let the governor sign that agreement," Elena said. Her warning made Cameron pause. Vanessa's eyes sharpened. "Listen to her. She steals from me, then threatens your company." "It isn't a threat." Elena glanced toward the balcony, overlooking the ballroom. A man in a gray tuxedo had been standing beside the control booth moments earlier. Now the space was empty. The harbor release is tied to accounts that don't belong to Reed Meridian. Cameron stepped closer. "How would a waitress know anything about our accounts?" Elena could not answer without revealing the report or explaining why Luca DeSantis had asked her to watch the gala's vendor reconciliations. If the room's communications were compromised, naming the accounts would tell whoever controlled them exactly what she had discovered. A metallic click echoed from the main doors. The security chief tested the handle. "They're locked." "Then unlock them," Cameron snapped. "I can't. The system has shifted to executive lockdown." The ballroom screens flickered. For half a second, Elena saw the hotel's security interface and a line of white text. "Archive deletion in progress." Then the charity logo returned. Vanessa pointed toward Elena. "She planned this. Detain her." One guard seized Elena's arm. She released the tray before it could fall. "Check beneath the dessert station," she told Cameron urgently. "There's a sealed report. Do not let Vanessa touch it." Vanessa's expression changed, not to fear but recognition. She already knew about the report. Before Elena could say more, the ballroom doors opened from the outside. 4 men in dark suits entered first. Luca DeSantis followed them, wearing a charcoal overcoat over a black formal suit. He surveyed the locked room, the raised phones, the bracelet on the table, and the guard gripping Elena. His face revealed nothing until he saw the champagne staining her uniform. Then the room seemed to contract around him. Luca crossed the marble floor without hurrying. The security guard released Elena before Luca reached them. Vanessa recovered first. "Mr. DeSantis, this woman stole from me and attempted to sabotage." Luca removed his coat and placed it around Elena's shoulders. "Take your hands off my wife." The words spread through the ballroom like a shock wave. Cameron stared at Elena. Vanessa went completely still. Elena looked up at Luca, unable to hide her own surprise. Their marriage had remained secret for 11 months, protected by an agreement neither of them had ever broken. Until now. High above them, inside the darkened control booth, a progress bar reached 100%. Every security recording from the previous hour vanished. Then a new message appeared on the operator's screen. "The report is still missing. Find her before 10. At 9:43 p.m., Luca DeSantis turned toward his security chief. "Matteo, control the doors. No one leaves, no one deletes anything else, and no one touches Elena." Matteo Serrano nodded and divided his men between the ballroom exits and the hotel's control booth. He was 42, broad-shouldered, disciplined, and one of the few people Luca trusted without requiring constant proof. Vanessa folded her arms. "You cannot imprison 200 guests because your secret wife stole my bracelet." Luca looked at the diamonds lying on the table. "If Elena wanted something you owned, you would never know it was gone." The statement was meant as a defense, but Elena heard the flaw inside it. Luca respected her competence whenever it served him. He simply preferred that nobody else knew she possessed it. Arg later, Elena said, "The report comes first." She moved toward the dessert station. Luca followed, while Cameron Reed and Vanessa remained close enough to observe. The envelope was gone. Elena crouched beside the linen-covered table and examined the polished floor. A faint streak of cocoa powder crossed the marble toward the service corridor. The dessert staff had dusted the trays minutes earlier, but the powder beneath the table had been protected until someone disturbed the cloth. "Whoever took it went toward the kitchens," she said. Cameron stared at her. "You determined that from chocolate." "Cocoa. Chocolate contains fat and would leave a darker mark." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "She carries plates. She isn't a detective." "No," Luca said. "She's the reason 3 federal audits failed to find a single irregularity in my legitimate companies." Elena rose slowly. It was the first time Luca had acknowledged her work publicly. 11 months earlier, before their quiet courthouse marriage, Elena had discovered that one of DeSantis' logistics vendors was charging the company for refrigerated trucks that did not exist. She had traced the invoices through handwritten delivery slips, fuel purchases, and warehouse temperature reports. The investigation saved Luca's company $6 million and exposed a manager selling access to a rival organization. Luca had asked her to continue reviewing his accounts. Elena had agreed on 2 conditions. She would keep her position as the Belladonna Hotel's banquet operations supervisor, and she would never alter evidence to protect him. "If your business cannot survive the truth," she had told him, "it deserves to collapse." That boundary had frustrated Luca, but it was also why he trusted every number she gave him. Publicly, however, Elena remained a waitress. She trained new servers, reconciled vendor deliveries, and worked the floor during important events because banquet invoices were easiest to manipulate when powerful guests assumed the staff were invisible. Tonight, that invisibility had allowed her to notice 4 charity vendors using the same authorization sequence. It had also made her easy to humiliate. A polished man with silver at his temples approached from behind Luca's guards. Dominic Ferraro, Luca's legal advisor, carried 2 phones and wore a navy suit untouched by the confusion around him. "I came as soon as Matteo called," Dominic said. He gave Elena a sympathetic look. "Are you hurt?" "Only publicly." "We can repair that." Dominic lowered his voice. "Luca, take Elena out through the loading dock. I'll contain the guests, and advised the governor to cancel the signing. No, Elena said immediately. Dominic's expression remained pleasant. The agreement is compromised. Canceling it activates the default provision. Reed Meridian would gain temporary control of the harbor escrow. Cameron frowned. There is no default provision. There is in Appendix 14. I reviewed that contract personally. Then someone changed it after you reviewed it. For the first time, Cameron looked genuinely frightened. Luca studied Elena's face. How certain are you? $90 million certain. Dominic stepped closer to Luca. She was found with stolen property, and the evidence she claims to have is missing. We should not reorganize an international agreement based solely on her word. Elena met his gaze. Dominic had always treated her politely, but never as Luca's equal. He had accepted her corrected ledgers for months and presented several of her findings to Luca without mentioning where they originated. Before Elena could answer, a mechanical printer began chattering beneath the banquet captain's desk. Unlike the hotel's digital system, the old impact printer produced carbon copies of every vendor adjustment. Elena had refused to let management replace it because electronic logs could be altered remotely. Paper required someone to physically remove it. She crossed the room and tore the new page from the machine. The document showed that the missing charity funds had been transferred at 9:44 p.m. 3 minutes after, security found Vanessa's bracelet in Elena's pouch. The authorization carried Elena's employee identification number. At the bottom of the page was the receiving company, Morpitality Consulting LLC. Her company, her account, her name. Luca read the document over her shoulder, his expression becoming unreadable. Then the ballroom lights dimmed, and Governor Hale entered through the newly opened doors. The clock changed to 9:52. 8 minutes remained before the harbor agreement, and the transfer carrying Elena's name became legally irreversible. Governor Hale entered the ballroom expecting applause and found 200 guests standing in uneasy silence. His chief counsel, Rebecca Sloan, followed closely behind him. She noticed Luca's coat around Elena's shoulders, Vanessa's bracelet on the table, and the carbon copy transfer record in Elena's hand. What happened? The governor asked. Cameron Reed forced a diplomatic smile. A minor security issue. We can proceed. No, Elena said. Every face turned toward her. Cameron's restraint disappeared. You are in no position to interrupt a state agreement. Elena placed the printed transfer record beside Vanessa's bracelet. If the governor signs at $10.90 million, will leave the North Harbor escrow under a beneficiary profile carrying my company's name. Rebecca Sloan stepped forward. Can you prove that? Give me access to the escrow verification page. Cameron hesitated. Dominic Ferraro leaned toward Luca. This is becoming a public spectacle, Dominic said. Remove her and let counsel review it privately. We have 7 minutes, Elena replied. Private review is what created this problem. Governor Hale looked at Cameron. Open the verification page. Cameron reluctantly led them to the presentation console. The large ballroom screens displayed the North Harbor Agreement, including 3 green authorization seals representing the state, Reed Meridian, and DeSantis Logistics. Elena entered the beneficiary number from the carbon copy. A company profile appeared. Morty Hospitality Consulting LLC. The address, tax number, and banking institution all matched Elena's legitimate business. Even the electronic signature resembled hers. Vanessa spoke from behind them. That seems very clear. Too clear, Elena said. She enlarged the signature record. Elena signed digital reports with her middle initial, but this authorization displayed only Elena Moretti. Cameron shrugged. People omit initials. I don't. My father and I had the same first initial, so I began using my middle initial on every financial document when I was 16. It was a small discrepancy, but enough to prove the profile had not been created from an original filing. Elena opened the certification history. The beneficiary had been added 6 months earlier by a Reed Meridian administrator. 3 weeks later, someone had approved it using a DeSantis logistics compliance terminal. Luca's eyes narrowed. Which terminal? The screen displayed the location. Executive Office, Terminal D4. That terminal is in my private study, Luca said. Dominic looked toward Elena. How often are you inside that room? The accusation was subtle, but everyone understood it. Elena had used Terminal D4 many times while reviewing Luca's accounts. Her fingerprint and access code were both registered there. I did not approve this profile. The system says your credentials did, Dominic replied. Elena ignored him and opened the attached vendor certificate. Its format looked correct, but the footer contained a 6-digit reference number. She copied it onto the back of her order pad and searched the hotel's charity vendor directory. The same number belonged to Bright Harbor Youth Services, one of the 4 charities whose payments had disappeared. One certificate was authentic, the other was a duplicate hidden beneath Elena's identity. That is the connection, she said. Someone cloned a charity certificate and attached my company to it. Cameron leaned toward the screen. Who has authority to duplicate a certificate? My foundation office, Vanessa answered, but dozens of employees have access. Elena looked at her. Vanessa had responded too quickly. Elena had asked who possessed authority, not which office controlled it. Before she could press further, every phone in the ballroom lost its signal. Matteo approached Luca. The hotel's internal network is routing all outgoing calls back through the control booth. My men reached the booth, but the operator is gone. Elena glanced at the clock. 9:56. The signing could not simply be canceled. Appendix 14 classified failure to execute the agreement by 10 as a voluntary default. Either outcome, signature, or cancellation would release Luca's $90 million performance bond into an account currently linked to Elena. Someone had designed the contract as a closed trap. There is one option, Elena said. The escrow has an emergency fraud hold. Cameron shook his head. That requires a registered compliance officer. I am registered under DeSantis Logistics. Dominic's gaze shifted sharply toward Luca. You gave her authority over the performance bond? I gave her authority to protect it, Luca said. The hold will freeze the money for 24 hours, Elena explained. But once I activate it, the system will copy the disputed beneficiary records into a protected state archive. Whoever created this profile will not be able to erase everything. And your name will be attached to the freeze, Dominic said. After a bracelet was found in your possession and stolen funds were routed to your company. Elena understood the danger. Activating the hold would preserve the evidence, but it would also create the perfect image of guilt, a woman freezing $90 million immediately before it entered an account bearing her name. Is there another way? Luca asked. Not before 10. The clock changed to 9:58. Luca studied her for one long moment. Do it. Elena placed her thumb on the compliance reader. The screen requested a second verification. She entered the rotating code from the small brass token she always carried inside her order pad. Across the ballroom, Vanessa's phone briefly regained service. A single outgoing message left the device before the network failed again. Elena completed the fraud hold at exactly 9:59. The green escrow seal turned red. Fund initiated by Elena R. Moretti. Governor Hale stepped away from the signing table. This agreement is officially under investigation. The clock reached 10. The money remained frozen. Then the printer beneath the banquet desk produced another page. Matteo retrieved it and handed it to Luca. It was an automatic audit receipt showing that, 1 second before Elena activated the hold, Someone had changed the emergency release destination. If the hold were removed, all $90 million would be transferred directly into Elena's real bank account. Luca looked up from the page. Vanessa was no longer in the ballroom. Vanessa's absence changed the accusation into something more dangerous. Cameron called her phone. It rang once, then disconnected. Matteo sent 2 men toward the service corridor while Governor Hale's counsel ordered the signing materials sealed. Guests were instructed to remain inside the ballroom until hotel security restored the network. At 10:03, Cameron received a delayed message from Vanessa. Elena knows about Bright Harbor. She threatened me. If they disappear, ask what she gave Marcus Vale. Attached was a photograph taken outside the hotel that afternoon. Elena stood beside Marcus Vale, the CEO of a rival shipping company, handing him a sealed envelope. Luca turned the screen toward her. Is this real? Yes. What was inside the envelope? I can't tell you. Dominic released a quiet breath. Elena, this is not the moment to protect a secret. The person who trusted me with it will be placed in danger. Luca's voice remained controlled. Marcus Vale has spent 2 years trying to take North Harbor from me. I wasn't working with Marcus. Then tell me who you were working with. Elena glanced at the people surrounding them. Cameron, Dominic, Rebecca Sloan, hotel security, and dozens of guests were listening. Whoever had duplicated the charity certificate was almost certainly still inside the building. If I say the name publicly, we may lose the only witness who can explain those payments. Dominic looked at Luca, convenient. A state financial investigator reached the ballroom through an independent radio channel. Rebecca placed the call on speaker. We confirmed the receiving account, the investigator said. It belongs to Moretti Hospitality Consulting. There is another issue. $400,000 entered that account 2 days ago from Bright Harbor Youth Services. Elena felt the room tilt beneath her. That account is dormant, she said. I only use it for quarterly consulting payments. Then you may not have noticed the deposit, Dominic replied, but the money is there. The evidence now formed a nearly perfect story. Elena had met Luca's rival, accepted money from a compromised charity, hidden a financial report, possessed Vanessa's bracelet, and activated a hold on $90 million scheduled to enter her own account. Every action except the theft was real. Only the meaning had been changed. Matteo returned from the hallway. Vanessa's purse and phone were found in the underground garage. She is missing. Cameron stared at Elena. What did you do to her? Nothing. Rebecca Sloan raised a hand. No one is making further accusations without evidence. Dominic opened the access history from Luca's private terminal. We have evidence. The screen showed Elena's fingerprint authorizing the cloned beneficiary profile 6 months earlier. The date matched a night she had spent reviewing DeSantis logistics accounts in Luca's study. Elena remembered leaving shortly after 11, but the system showed her credentials active until 11:47 p.m. I didn't remain that late. Who else knew your access code? Luca asked. No one. What about your brass token? It never leaves my possession. Luca looked at the token still resting inside her open order pad. Elena recognized the thought he did not voice. If her credentials could not be copied and her token had never been stolen, then the authorization had to be hers. Luca, she said, someone designed this evidence for you. They knew what you would trust. His expression tightened because the accusation touched his oldest weakness. Luca believed systems could be controlled, blood loyalty could be measured, and betrayal could be identified before it reached him. But someone had reached him through all three. Give Matteo your token, Luca said. Elena did not move. And then, you will stay at the DeSantis residence until we establish what happened. Under guard. For your protection. No, for your certainty. The ballroom cameras were gone, but dozens of guests were still recording. Luca had publicly called her his wife less than 20 minutes earlier. Now he was publicly treating her like a suspect. I trusted you with authority over everything I built, he said quietly. You trusted my work, Elena replied. You never learned to trust me when the numbers became uncomfortable. A pain crossed his face, but he did not withdraw the order. Matteo. Elena removed the brass token and placed it in Matteo's palm. The act looked like surrender. It was not. The token stored no account information, but its casing carried a tiny mechanical counter. Elena checked the number every morning. Someone had attempted to activate it twice before the gala, yet the token had never left her locked office. That meant the attempt had occurred inside the hotel. As Matteo escorted her through the kitchen, Elena studied the staff around them. One banquet attendant stood beside the freight elevator wearing a silver charity pin. Elena had issued blue pins to every employee that morning. Silver pins belonged only to Vanessa's foundation team. The attendant pressed his radio. The package is moving, he whispered. Elena heard him. So did Matteo. The lights went out before Matteo could respond. A service cart crashed somewhere in the darkness. Emergency lamps illuminated the corridor seconds later, but two unfamiliar men were already blocking the route back to the ballroom. Matteo moved between them and Elena. Go. Elena did not wait to be rescued. She entered the staff passage beside the pantry, pulled the fire door closed behind her, and used her banquet key to lock it. Her phone regained a weak signal inside the stairwell. She called the person she had protected by refusing to explain the photograph. Olivia. A frightened voice answered. They found me. Don't go home, Elena. Someone inside Luca's family gave them everything. The call ended. Elena descended toward the loading level, avoiding both the garage and the main lobby. She knew Luca would search apartment, the hotel exits, and every property connected to her company. There was only one place she could go without leading the conspirators to Olivia. At 10:19, Matteo reached the stairwell and found Elena's phone beside the locked loading door. Elena Moretti had disappeared. Back in the ballroom, Dominic handed Luca a printed copy of the transfer record. She ran, he said. Now you know why. Luca stared at Elena's abandoned phone, then issued the order that would deepen the damage he had already caused. Freeze every account under her name. The order left Luca's mouth at 10:20 p.m. By midnight, he understood what it had cost. Video of Vanessa pouring champagne over Elena had spread across every major social platform. Several recordings captured Luca calling Elena his wife. Others showed her surrendering the brass token before disappearing. The public conclusion was immediate. The Mafia boss had secretly married a waitress who had attempted to steal $90 million. Reed Meridian suspended the harbor agreement. 3 banks froze DeSantis logistics credit lines, and Governor Hale scheduled an emergency public review for 8 the following evening, 2 hours before Elena's fraud hold would expire. Without Elena, Luca's legitimate companies began to fracture. Auditors requested records no one else could locate. 6 vendor payments failed because Dominic's legal team did not understand Elena's reconciliation codes. A refrigeration shipment remained trapped at North Harbor after an invoice discrepancy she would normally have resolved in minutes. At 6:10 the following morning, Luca stood inside Elena's empty office at the Belladonna Hotel. Her champagne-stained jacket hung over a chair. Her order pad remained on the desk, missing only the brass token she had surrendered. Dominic entered carrying a folder. The state investigator confirmed the $400,000 deposit. It entered Elena's real account 48 hours before the gala. And she never touched it. No withdrawal, no transfer, no attempt to hide it. Dominic treated the detail as irrelevant. Luca did not. It was the first contradiction. Elena checked every account each morning before work. If she had accepted a criminal payment, she would not have left the full amount untouched where any investigator could find it. More importantly, she had activated a fraud hold that preserved the beneficiary records inside a state archive. A thief would have erased evidence. Elena had protected it. Matteo entered with the brass token sealed inside a clear evidence pouch. "You need to see this." He pointed to the mechanical counter built into its casing. The number read 2417. Elena had written the previous day's number 2417 on the inside cover of her order pad. "2 activation attempts," Luca said. "Both happened before the gala," Matteo replied. "The manufacturer confirmed the counter advances even when authentication fails. Someone attempted to copy its signal twice." Elena said the token never left her office. Matteo placed the hotel staffing schedule beside it. From 4 until 9, she supervised the ballroom setup. 12 employees confirmed she never returned here. The second contradiction was technical and more serious. Someone had entered Elena's locked office while she was working downstairs. That person could have photographed her documents, accessed the dormant account information, and attempted to duplicate the token. Dominic closed the folder, or Elena allowed an accomplice inside. Luca looked at him. "You believed she acted alone last night. New evidence creates new possibilities." Again, the response came too smoothly. Luca remembered Dominic advising him to remove Elena before she could inspect the beneficiary certificate. He also remembered Dominic knowing that Appendix 14 would trigger a default, although Cameron Reed, the CEO who supposedly reviewed the agreement, had not known the clause existed. Dominic knew too much too early. Luca concealed his suspicion. At 6:42, he began testing the people closest to the investigation. He told Cameron Reed that Elena's missing report had been recovered from the hotel safe. He told Matteo it had been copied into the governor's protected archive. He told Dominic that the original report had been found inside DeSantis Warehouse 12. Only one version was true. The state archive possessed an automatic copy. The physical report remained missing. 26 minutes later, an alarm activated at Warehouse 12. 2 intruders entered through a contractor gate and searched Luca's document room. They found nothing, but their timing answered the question Luca had been afraid to ask. The false location had reached them through Dominic. The third contradiction was adversarial. Luca did not confront him, not yet. Instead, he ordered Matteo to examine everyone Dominic had contacted after leaving Elena's office. He called 3 people, Matteo reported: his assistant, the Reed Meridian Legal Department, and Vanessa Cole. When? Vanessa's call began at 6:47. The warehouse alarm triggered 21 minutes later. Luca stared through the office window at the ballroom below. Staff members were replacing the stained tablecloths as if humiliation could be removed with laundry. He had defended Elena when the insult was simple and visible. He had rejected her when believing her required risk. Matteo placed Elena's abandoned phone on the desk. The last outgoing call was made at 10:17 last night. To whom? Olivia Park, Senior Procurement Auditor for the State Harbor Commission. The name matched Elena's incomplete warning about a witness. Olivia had disappeared from her apartment overnight, but her credentials had been used again at 6:12 that morning. Not at a bank, airport, or hotel. At the State Records Annex. Rebecca Sloan arrived minutes later and confirmed that Olivia had requested access to the protected copy created by Elena's fraud hold. The annex closed for renovation last month, Rebecca explained. Its network is disconnected, but the physical records room remains operational. If Olivia wanted to examine evidence without alerting the compromised harbor system, that is where she would go. And Elena, Luca asked. Rebecca hesitated. The exterior camera captured 2 women entering through the employee entrance. One matches Olivia. She placed a still image on Elena's desk. The second woman wore Luca's charcoal overcoat. Elena was alive. She had found the witness. Matteo reached for his radio, but Luca stopped him. Dominic monitors our security channel. If we move openly, he will know where she is. Luca took Elena's order pad and placed it inside his coat. For the first time since she disappeared, he chose to follow her method instead of issuing another command. Bring one car, he told Matteo. No family guards, no digital route. At 7:05 a.m., Luca left for the State Records Annex. Behind him, Dominic watched from the hotel lobby and quietly opened Vanessa's last message. If he fins Elena, activate the second account. Luca left the Belladonna Hotel with Matteo driving and no additional guards. Neither man carried a phone. The State Records Annex stood 20 minutes away in an abandoned government district near North Harbor. Renovation fencing surrounded the 6-story stone building, and plastic covered most of its windows. Matteo stopped in the service lane. No vehicles, he said. That means Elena expected pursuit, Luca replied. Inside, the annex smelled of dust, old paper, and damp concrete. Emergency lights illuminated a narrow path through stacked archive boxes. They found Elena and Olivia Park inside the second-floor records room. Elena still wore Luca's charcoal coat over her stained server's uniform. She stood between Olivia and the door, holding a metal document case against her chest. When she saw Luca, her relief lasted less than a second. Then the hurt returned. How did you find us? The State Archive recorded Olivia's access. So Dominic can find us too. I gave him a false location, and he sent people there. Elena read the answer in Luca's silence. You finally tested him. I should have done it before I tested you. The admission did not repair what had happened, but it stopped Elena from ordering him to leave. Olivia stepped forward. She was 39, exhausted, and still wearing the gray business suit from the previous afternoon. Vanessa's foundation has been duplicating charity vendor certificates for at least 8 months, Olivia explained. I found 3 North Harbor bid scores altered inside the procurement system. Every altered contract benefited a company represented by Dominic Ferraro's law firm. Why didn't you report it? Matteo asked. I tried. My complaint went directly to the Harbor Commission's internal counsel. 6 hours later, someone broke into my office. Elena placed the metal case on a reading table. The system was compromised, she said. That is why I gave the original vendor ledgers to Marcus Vale. He wasn't purchasing information from me. Olivia asked him to carry the records to an independent state investigator. Luca understood the photograph now. It showed a real meeting and a real envelope stripped of its purpose. Why didn't you tell me in the ballroom? Because Vanessa knew Olivia existed but did not know her name. The hotel network was recording outgoing calls. Naming Olivia in that room would have given her to them. Luca looked at Olivia. And last night? When Elena called, men were outside my apartment. She led them away before bringing me here. Elena had been framed, publicly rejected, and financially isolated. Yet her first action after escaping Luca's guards had been to protect someone else. Respect replaced the last of his doubt. Olivia opened the case and removed several embossed vendor certificates. Each carried the same 6-digit reference number Elena had discovered at the gala. These prove duplication, Olivia said, but not who ordered it. Vanessa's foundation seal appears on every certificate, although she can claim an employee misused it. And Dominic, Luca asked. His firm created the receiving companies, but he used junior attorneys as registered agents. Elena placed 2 pages side by side. They built more than one trap. The first account took your $90 million bond. The second account activates if the first is frozen. What does it do? It creates a retroactive consulting payment from Bright Harbor to DeSantis Logistics. On paper, it makes you look like you accepted charity funds to influence the Harbor contract. Luca understood the objective. The family council removes me to protect the organization and appoints Dominic as interim executor, Elena said. He gains control of your voting shares, the harbor routes, and every legitimate company attached to them. Vanessa would keep Reed Meridian and political access. Dominic would inherit Luca's empire without challenging him directly. A heavy door closed somewhere below them. Matteo moved toward the hallway. We have company. Through the frosted glass, 3 silhouettes entered the archive floor. They separated, checking each room. Luca reached for the document case. We take everything. No, Elena said. The large case will slow us down, and most of these are copies. She selected 4 embossed certificates and the original procurement manifest. These matter. Luca did not argue. He placed the pages inside Elena's order pad and returned it to her. You lead. It was the first time he had followed her plan without attempting to improve it. Olivia knew a secondary route through the renovation area, but the corridor ended at an electronically locked fire door. The annex network had been disabled, leaving the access panel useless. Elena examined the wall beside it. Renovation crews still need emergency entry. There will be a mechanical release at the records desk. Matteo remained behind to delay the intruders while Elena, Luca, and Olivia returned to the central desk. A warning alarm began echoing through the floor as someone forced open the records room door. Elena found a row of labeled brass keys beneath the counter. Most people would have chosen the key marked Fire Exit. She selected one marked Architransfer. Fire exit locks were replaced during renovation, she explained. The transfer bay is still operating under the old system. The key opened the door. They entered a narrow loading corridor just as Matteo joined them. The intruders reached the opposite end, but a descending security barrier separated the 2 groups before anyone could cross. Outside, Matteo's second vehicle waited beneath the loading canopy. They reached it safely with the 5 original documents. Only after they were moving did Elena notice abrasions across Matteo's knuckles. He had bought them time without allowing the confrontation to become fatal. Luca sat opposite Elena in the rear seat. I froze your accounts, he said. I know. I believed evidence designed by someone who understood my fear better than I understood your character. That is not an apology. No, an apology without repair would only ask you to make me feel better. Elena looked away, but she did not ask him to stop the car. Olivia unfolded the original procurement manifest. Along its lower edge were faint pressure marks left by the seal used on the document placed above it. Elena shaded the impressions with the side of a pencil. A second authorization code appeared. Olivia compared it with the emergency hearing schedule on her paper file. This code was issued at 7:28 this morning, she said. For what? Luca asked. Olivia's face tightened. Vanessa Cole registered as the state's principal witness for tonight's public hearing. She intends to testify that Elena kidnapped her, stole the harbor funds, and acted under your orders. At that moment, every radio station in the city began carrying the same breaking announcement. Vanessa Cole had been found alive, and she was accusing the Mafia boss and his secret wife of running the largest charity fraud scheme in state history. By 8:15 a.m., Elena, Luca, Matteo, and Olivia were inside a secure conference room at the State Ethics Commission. Rebecca Sloan joined them with 2 financial investigators and a court-certified document examiner. No evidence entered the room electronically. Every page was numbered, copied, and sealed in separate paper packets. Elena arranged the evidence across the table. The first group established that the official story was incomplete. Her missing middle initial, the untouched $400,000 deposit, the 2 unauthorized token attempts, and the impossible timing of the beneficiary change. That proves I may have been framed, Elena said. It does not prove who framed me. The second group connected Vanessa and Dominic to the mechanism. Bright Harbor's seal appeared on the duplicated certificates. Dominic's law firm had created all 4 receiving companies. His private call to Vanessa had been followed by the attempted search of Warehouse 12. That proves access and coordination, Olivia said. They can still claim their employees acted without permission. Rebecca nodded. We need proof of intent, the decisive act. The fraud hold would expire at 9:59 that night. Governor Hale's emergency hearing began at 8. The hearing were canceled. Appendix 14 would automatically release Luca's performance bond and activate the false charity payment against DeSantis Logistics. They could not hide from the public event. They had to use it. Luca looked toward Rebecca. Can the governor postpone the expiration? Not without approval from every party named in the agreement. Vanessa now claims to represent Reed Meridian's interests because Cameron has temporarily stepped aside. She designed a position only she can block, Mateo said. Elena studied the embossed certificates. Each impression contained a faint crescent-shaped defect near the lower edge. How many official seals does Bright Harbor use? She asked Olivia. 3. 1 in the foundation office, 1 in secure storage, and 1 carried by Vanessa for public events. The defect came from the same seal every time. They could duplicate the digital certificate, but they still needed a physical impression to pass document review. The seal was their constraint. If Vanessa knew investigators could identify it, she would have to destroy it, replace it, or claim it had been stolen. Any of those actions would create a new trace. Elena began building the countertrap. Dominic would be told that the records recovered from the annex identified Vanessa's personal seal as the source of every fraudulent certificate. In reality, the documents proved only that 1 of the 3 seals had been used. Rebecca obtained an emergency preservation order covering all Bright Harbor records and equipment. State investigators would inventory the foundation office before the hearing without revealing which seal they expected to find. If Vanessa moves her seal after learning what we supposedly know, Elena said, she connects herself to the fraud. And Dominic connects himself by warning her, Luca added. No digital messages, Elena said. He knows systems can be traced. He will use a person. Luca watched her take control of the room. The night before, he had demanded certainty from her while offering none in return. Now he followed her reasoning without interruption. What do you need from me? He asked. Elena looked directly at him. Call Dominic. Tell him I returned and gave you the original report. Say I'm prepared to surrender if he protects you from the family council. He will not believe you trust him. He doesn't need to. He only needs to believe you still distrust me. The words struck harder than accusation because Dominic had already witnessed Luca's failure. At 9:02, Luca made the call from Rebecca's office while investigators recorded it under the preservation order. Dominic answered immediately. I found Elena, Luca said. She claims the annex records identify Vanessa's personal seal. A pause followed. Where is she now? Dominic asked. With me. Turn her over before the hearing. I can argue that you were deceived. Luca looked at Elena across the room. She offered me the original report in exchange for immunity. Elena's face remained composed. Dominic finally answered, Do not let her reach the commission. The call ended. At 9:19, an investigator stationed outside Bright Harbor reported movement. Vanessa's executive assistant entered the foundation's secure storage room and removed a locked presentation case that had not appeared on the official inventory. The assistant carried it directly to a private vehicle registered to Dominic Ferraro's law firm. The controlled information had produced an incriminating action, but it still did not prove what was inside the case. Rebecca could preserve the vehicle and question the assistant, but Dominic would argue that the case contained ordinary gala materials. Without opening it under proper authority, the chain of evidence could collapse. We let them bring it to the hearing, Elena said. Luca's expression hardened. That puts you in the same building as Vanessa and Dominic. That is where they humiliated me. That is where they accused me. And that is where the fraud hold can be released. You would be safer away from them. Safety without vindication leaves their story intact. Luca accepted her decision. They prepared 3 identical evidence packets. Rebecca would carry one. Olivia would deposit another with the court clerk. Matteo would keep the third outside the hearing chamber. If the presentation screens failed, they would use the paper copies. If the network disappeared, the carbon receipts would remain. If Elena were removed from the room, Olivia could continue the presentation. At 11:30, the document examiner confirmed that the fraudulent certificates and the procurement manifest had been impressed by the same damaged seal. At 2:10 p.m., the state bank confirmed that the $400,000 payment had passed through a client trust account controlled by Dominic's firm. They had suspicion. They had connection. They still needed proof that Vanessa and Dominic knowingly ordered the $90 million transfer. At 4:40 p.m., Elena discovered how to obtain it. The emergency release account could be changed only once more before the fraud hold expired. Whoever attempted the change would have to enter the original 6-digit charity certificate number and authenticate it using the physical seal's internal registration code. That code was not printed anywhere. It existed only inside the presentation case Vanessa's assistant had removed. Elena wrote a false release account number on one page and placed it inside the evidence packet Luca would visibly carry into the hearing. If they believe this is where we plan to secure the money, she said, they will change the destination first. And the system will record the seal code, Rebecca said. Even if they delete the screen, the impact printer at the Belladonna will create a carbon receipt. The old machine Elena had refused to replace became their independent witness. At 7:12 p.m., they departed for the public hearing. Across the city, Vanessa opened the presentation case inside Dominic's office. The damaged Bright Harbor seal rested within it. Beside the seal lay a forged order transferring control of DeSantis logistics to Dominic at 9:59 p.m. Vanessa looked at the clock. Tonight, she said, we take the money, the harbor, and Luca's empire. At 7:47 p.m., Elena entered the state hearing chamber through a corridor lined with reporters. She had replaced her stained server's uniform with a simple navy dress Rebecca kept in her office, but she still carried the same worn order pad. Luca walked beside her. Olivia and Rebecca followed with the sealed evidence packets. Across the chamber, Vanessa sat behind a table marked Reed Meridian Holdings. Cameron Reed occupied the chair beside her, looking exhausted. Dominic stood behind both of them as legal counsel. A black presentation case rested near his feet. The public gallery was full. The hearing was being broadcast live. Governor Hale opened the proceeding at 8. Vanessa testified first. She described Elena as a resentful employee who had secretly used her marriage to Luca to access North Harbor funds. She claimed Elena had threatened her after Vanessa discovered the missing charity payments. I was told that if I spoke, Vanessa said, Mr. DeSantis would destroy Cameron's company and take control of the harbor. Did Elena abduct you? Rebecca asked. Vanessa paused for the cameras. She forced me into the garage. I escaped when the lights failed. It was a compelling story supported by carefully selected facts. Elena had been in the garage earlier that evening. The hotel lights had failed. Vanessa's purse and phone had been found there. Rebecca presented the first evidence packet. She showed that Elena had never touched the $400,000 deposit. She presented the token counter proving 2 unauthorized activation attempts. She explained that the emergency beneficiary had been changed while Elena was visibly activating the fraud hold. Vanessa remained composed. Someone assisting Elena could have done those things, she replied. The document examiner then presented the 4 duplicated certificates. Each bore the damaged crescent-shaped impression from the same Bright Harbor seal. Governor Hale turned toward Vanessa. "Where is your personal foundation seal?" Dominic lifted the black presentation case onto the evidence table. "Here." A state investigator opened it. Inside was an official Bright Harbor seal. The document examiner tested it on a blank verification sheet. Its impression was perfect. No crescent effect appeared. Elena looked toward Rebecca. Vanessa had anticipated the comparison and replaced the seal. "The foundation owns 3 seals," Dominic said. "Dozens of employees have handled them. One may have been damaged and discarded months ago. Their strongest physical connection had just disappeared." Olivia testified next. She described the altered bid scores, the duplicated charities, and the 4 shell companies represented by Dominic's firm. Dominic produced an employment agreement showing that Olivia had accepted a future position with Marcus Vale's company. "This witness was paid by our largest competitor," he announced. "I never signed that," Olivia said. The signature looked authentic. Governor Hale allowed her testimony to remain in the record, but reporters were already publishing the accusation. The public hearing had become another machine for changing the meaning of true events. At 9:06, the family council submitted its emergency petition. The forged charity payment made Luca appear responsible for laundering public donations through DeSantis Logistics. Under the company charter, the council could remove him if he failed to resolve the fraud before the performance bond was released. Dominic would become interim executor at 9:59. Elena studied the room. Their trap had failed because Vanessa had not brought the damaged seal. Without its internal code, no one could change the emergency release account. Unless the real seal was somewhere else. She turned toward Luca. "The Belladonna," she whispered. The hotel still contained the old impact printer and the banquet compliance terminal. Someone could use the damaged seal there while everyone watched the hearing. Luca understood immediately. Matteo had remained outside with the 3rd evidence packet. Luca wrote 1 sentence on the back of Elena's order pad and passed it to Rebecca. "Send Matteo to the Belladonna. Do not use the radio." At 9:21, Dominic requested immediate removal of Elena's compliance authority. "If Mrs. DeSantis retains access," he argued, "she can continue manipulating the fraud hold until it expires." Governor Hale looked toward Luca. "Do you still authorize your wife to control the escrow?" The room became silent. During the drive to the hearing, Elena had prepared Luca for this possibility. "If they replace the seal," she had told him, "they will not act while you publicly trust me. You must make them believe I have lost access and protection." "I already did that once," Luca had answered. "This time I am choosing it." Now Luca stood before the cameras. "Elena acted without my company's approval," he said. "I revoke her compliance authority effective immediately." The gallery erupted. Even knowing the plan, Elena felt the weight of the words. Luca did not look away from her. He allowed the world to believe he had rejected her again because the trap required Dominic to believe it too. Dominic's posture relaxed. Vanessa smiled. At 9:34, the hearing screens displayed the final escrow countdown. 25 minutes remained. Rebecca attempted to introduce the warehouse test connecting Dominic to the intruders, but Dominic challenged the evidence as speculative. The governor admitted the call record, but refused to treat it as proof of fraud. At 9:43, Cameron Reed announced that he was transferring emergency corporate authority to Vanessa until the investigation ended. At 9:48, the DeSantis Family Council cast its preliminary vote. 5 members supported Luca's removal, 2 opposed it. 1 vote remained unsubmitted. At 9:52, the fraud hold display changed. Emergency beneficiary use count. Elena rose from her chair. Someone had used the damaged seal. Rebecca demanded the authentication record, but the system returned an error. The internal registration code had been deleted immediately after use. The hearing screens went dark. Dominic looked toward Luca with open satisfaction. "You trusted the wrong woman," he said. Luca answered calmly, "That is what you needed to believe." At 9:56, the screens returned. The performance bond was now scheduled to transfer into an unidentified offshore trust when the hold expired. 3 minutes remained. Rebecca called Matteo. No answer. At 9:58, Cameron submitted the final council vote on behalf of Reed Meridian's partnership shares. Luca was removed. Dominic Ferraro became interim executor of DeSantis Logistics. Vanessa signed the emergency harbor authorization. The clock reached 9:59. For one terrible second, nothing happened. Then the $90 million bond disappeared from the state escrow screen. Dominic closed his folder. "It's over." Elena looked down at her order pad. The false release account number she had planted inside Luca's evidence packet was the same number now displayed on the public transfer record. The villains had taken the bait. But without the damaged seal or the carbon receipt, Elena still could not prove who had entered it. The chamber doors opened. Matteo stepped inside, carrying a long strip of freshly printed carbon paper. Behind him walked the Belladonna's night auditor and Vanessa's executive assistant. The assistant held the damaged Bright Harbor seal in both hands. The hearing chamber erupted as Matteo placed the carbon receipt on the evidence table. Vanessa's executive assistant, Claire Benton, set the damaged Bright Harbor seal beside it. The crescent-shaped defect matched every fraudulent certificate. Dominic recovered first. "This proves an employee stole foundation property," he said. "It does not connect Vanessa or me to the transfer." Vanessa turned toward Claire with practiced disbelief. "How could you do this?" Claire looked frightened, but she did not answer them. She addressed Governor Hale. At 9:17 this morning, Ms. Cole ordered me to remove the presentation case from secure storage. I delivered it to a vehicle belonging to Mr. Ferraro's firm. His driver replaced the seal inside the case and told me to take the damaged one to the Belladonna Hotel. Dominic shook his head, a story invented after she was caught. Elena stood and walked toward the evidence table. "She does not need you to believe her story," Elena said. "The paper already recorded what happened." She held up the carbon receipt. The old impact printer had captured the transaction before anyone erased the digital authentication history. The receipt contained the damaged seal's internal registration code, the charity certificate number, the exact time of authorization, and the false release account Elena had planted inside Luca's evidence packet. Dominic dismissed it with a gesture. Anyone could have entered those numbers. Not this one. Elena pointed to the release account. That number was created this afternoon by the State Ethics Commission. It was never a real offshore trust. It was a controlled custodial account. Rebecca Sloan presented the court authorization. "The $90 million bond was not lost," she announced. "It entered a protected state account the moment the fraud hold expired." The apparent theft had become the final trap. Elena continued. "Vanessa and Dominic believed this number belonged to an account we intended to use. They copied it from Luca's packet and entered it using the damaged seal. The Belladonna printer preserved the full transaction." Vanessa rose. "Luca could have ordered someone to create that receipt. That is why we prepared independent verification." Olivia presented the original procurement manifest. The document examiner confirmed that its seal impression matched the damaged seal Claire had brought into the room. Rebecca then presented the Bright Harbor storage record. Vanessa's personal access code had opened the secure room at 9:14 that morning. Claire entered 3 minutes later. Finally, Matteo handed Governor Hale a certified statement from the Belladonna's night auditor. The auditor had watched Claire authenticate the seal at the banquet terminal. When Claire hesitated, Dominic called the hotel's private office line and supplied the 6-digit charity certificate number. The hotel's telephone exchange had automatically recorded the originating number. It belonged to Dominic's law firm. 3 independent sources now aligned: the physical seal, the carbon transaction, and the authenticated call. Dominic's expression changed. Not panic. Calculation. He reached for the forged order transferring control of DeSantis Logistics. As interim executor, I order all company security personnel to remove Elena Moretti from this chamber. She is interfering with a lawful corporate transition. 4 private guards near the gallery moved forward. That was Dominic's contingency. If the evidence survived, he would use temporary control of Luca's organization to seize it and silence the hearing before the council reversed its vote. But Elena had anticipated that possibility. The forged transfer order depends on the same charity certificate, she said. She opened her order pad and removed the original corporate charter page copied from the annex. Any succession vote connected to a disputed charitable payment is automatically suspended until an independent audit is completed. Dominic never became executor. The guards stopped. Matteo remained near Elena, but he did not need to intervene. State security officers were already stationed at every exit under Rebecca's preservation order. Dominic had no lawful authority in the room. Vanessa moved toward the side corridor. 2 investigators blocked the door. Cameron Reed stared at the documents before him. "Vanessa, tell me this isn't true." She gave him no answer. Governor Hale ordered the public screens restored. Rebecca displayed the complete evidence timeline. Vanessa's foundation duplicated the charity certificates. Dominic's firm created the receiving companies. Elena's dormant account was compromised to frame her. The bracelet had been removed from Bright Harbor's auction inventory and planted in Elena's pouch. The hotel surveillance archive was erased using a Foundation Administrator badge. The $90 million destination was changed with Vanessa's damaged seal and a certificate number supplied from Dominic's office. Vanessa attempted one final rebuttal. Elena arranged all of this because she wanted Luca's empire. Elena turned toward the cameras. "I froze the money when moving it would have benefited me. I preserved the evidence when deleting it would have protected me. And I surrendered the only token that could have released the hold. Their accusation depends on every loyal action being interpreted as betrayal." The chamber became silent. That was the central truth of the conspiracy. Vanessa and Dominic had not invented Elena's actions. They had changed their context because they believed no one would trust a plus-size waitress over a CEO's girlfriend and a respected legal advisor. They had misjudged her profession, her discipline, and her refusal to abandon evidence. Governor Hale formally cleared Elena of wrongdoing and voided the emergency harbor authorization. The family council withdrew Luca's removal vote after learning it had been based on forged records. Investigators detained Vanessa and Dominic pending charges for fraud, evidence tampering, conspiracy, and obstruction. Claire was placed under witness protection while her role was reviewed. Cameron stepped away from the Reed Meridian table, leaving Vanessa's chair empty. Reporters called Elena's name from every side. Luca did not move in front of her or answer on her behalf. He stepped back. For the first time, the entire room waited to hear the woman they had once mistaken for invisible. Elena approached the microphone and placed the champagne-stained server badge she had carried in her order pad beside the carbon receipt. "My name is Elena R. Moretti," she said, "and this investigation was solved because a waitress understood the records everyone else ignored." Elena's statement lasted 11 minutes. She explained the fraud without exaggeration, credited Olivia, Claire, Matteo, Rebecca, and the Belladonna night auditor, then requested an independent review of every North Harbor charity contract. When she finished, Luca approached the microphone. He did not touch her or ask her to remain beside him. "Elena warned me," he said before the cameras. "I chose evidence manufactured by people I trusted over the character she had demonstrated for years. I froze her accounts, damaged her reputation, and placed her in greater danger. Those decisions were mine. There is no excuse for them." He then released every internal message and order connected to Elena's accusation. DeSantis Logistics paid for her legal representation, restored her accounts, and issued corrections to every company and media outlet that had repeated the false allegations. Luca repaired the public harm publicly. Elena did not forgive him that night. She returned to her own apartment and refused the security detail he attempted to assign her. When he offered a smaller team, she refused that too. "You still think protection is something you impose," she told him. "If we continue this marriage you ask, I decide." Luca accepted the boundary. Over the following 3 months, the North Harbor conspiracy produced consequences far beyond the hearing. Vanessa was removed from Bright Harbor's board and charged with fraud, evidence tampering, and filing a false statement. Dominic lost his law firm and faced additional charges connected to the shell companies and the attempted corporate takeover. Cameron Reed resigned as CEO after admitting that he had ignored repeated compliance warnings to protect Vanessa and the Harbor Agreement. Reed Meridian entered independent financial supervision. The missing charity money was recovered. Governor Hale canceled the compromised contract and ordered a transparent rebidding process. Luca regained control of DeSantis Logistics, then voluntarily surrendered unilateral authority. He created an independent board, closed every off-book operation that could not survive legal review, and gave outside auditors permanent access. Elena did not become his employee. She founded Moretti Integrity Group, a forensic compliance firm that served hotels, charities, and transportation companies. DeSantis Logistics became its first client, but Luca signed the same contract and paid the same rates as everyone else. 6 months after the hearing, the Belladonna Hotel hosted the first public fundraiser under Elena's redesigned charity system. The ballroom looked almost identical to the night Vanessa had humiliated her. The orchestra played near the same marble staircase. The dessert station stood in the same position. But Elena no longer wore a server's jacket. She entered wearing a tailored navy suit, carrying the restored order pad that had preserved the evidence. Hotel employees greeted her as the architect of the new compliance program. Luca waited near the ballroom doors. "I have one final proposal," he said. Elena raised an eyebrow. "Business or marriage?" "Both." He offered her equal voting authority over every lawful DeSantis enterprise and the unrestricted right to audit, reject, or leave any venture bearing her name. Elena read the agreement carefully. Then she returned it unsigned. Luca accepted the decision without protest. "I'll have your attorney send revisions," he said. Elena smiled. "Now you're learning." She had added 3 conditions. Their marriage would never again be hidden for his convenience. No order affecting her could be issued without her consent, and her firm would remain completely independent. Luca signed first. Elena signed only after verifying every page. As they entered the ballroom, a young server accidentally dropped a tray. The room went quiet for a moment, remembering the scandal that had begun there. Elena helped her gather the fallen place cards. "No humiliation," she told the event director. "Fix the problem, protect the employee, and continue." The music resumed. Luca waited until Elena stood, then offered his hand without pulling her forward. She chose to take it. The first time he had called her his wife, it had been an act of protection. This time, when he introduced her to the room, his words carried something stronger. "My wife, Elena Moretti, founder of Moretti Integrity Group and my equal partner." Elena stepped toward the microphone on her own, and Luca stepped back, leaving the room to her.